What if everything you think you know about change is wrong? What if your failures weren't a reflection of your discipline, but a reflection of invisible patterns shaping your life without your permission? We're diving deep into one of the most eye-opening and transformational books of our time, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. This isn't just a summary. It's a journey through the science, the stories, the struggles, and the real-life transformations that reveal how habits work and how they can work for you instead of against you. So whether you're trying to break a bad cycle, build a better version of yourself, or simply understand why change feels so hard, stick with me. Because once you understand the habit loop, you'll never see your life the same way again. Welcome to the moment your transformation begins. It all started with a cookie. Every afternoon at exactly 3:30 p.m., a reporter named Charles would leave his desk, take the elevator down, walk to the cafeteria, and grab a chocolate chip cookie. Day after day, like clockwork. He wasn't hungry. He wasn't bored. But somehow it felt necessary. And what started as a harmless treat slowly turned into an extra 8 pounds clinging to his waistline. He didn't even realize he had built a habit. Until he did. And once he noticed, he wanted to stop. So, he did what most people do. He made a promise to himself. No more cookies. But 2 days later, there he was again. Cookie in hand. How do you explain that? It wasn't a lack of discipline. It wasn't even about the cookie. There was something bigger going on, something that was shaping his behavior, steering his actions, and quietly hijacking his decision-making without permission. And the scariest part? He's not alone. We all do it. Every single day. You might think you're in control of your life, but studies show almost 40% of your daily actions aren't decisions at all, they're habits. We wake up, check our phones, brush our teeth the same way, drive the same route, talk the same way, even feel the same emotions at the same times. It's all on autopilot. Invisible patterns running in the background. But what if you could change just one pattern, and everything else shifted with it? That's exactly what happened to Lisa Allen. A woman in her 30s, crushed by debt, 2 failed marriages, addicted to cigarettes, fast food, and sleeping pills. Her life felt like a constant loop of starting over and failing. But one day, she bought a plane ticket to Cairo after a terrible breakup, hoping for a distraction. What she found instead was a moment of clarity. Sitting on a hotel bed, sweating and exhausted, she promised herself one thing: she would stop smoking. Not lose weight, not get clean, not find a job, just quit smoking. It didn't sound like much, but it was the beginning of everything. Within months, her entire life transformed. She stopped drinking. She ran marathons. She lost 60 pounds. She got a master's degree. It was as if something inside her clicked. But it wasn't a miracle. It was a habit. More importantly, it was what scientists now call a keystone habit, one single behavior change that triggers a domino effect across your entire identity. But changing a habit isn't as easy as deciding to do it. If it was, no one would smoke. Everyone would eat clean. The gyms would be packed all year. The truth is, habit change is war. And the battleground? Your brain. Buried deep inside your skull is an ancient structure called the basal ganglia, a part of your brain that takes over once a behavior becomes automatic. It doesn't care if the habit is good or bad. It only cares about repetition. That's why you can drive home without remembering a single turn. It's also why you reach for your phone when you're sad or snack when you're stressed. The basal ganglia doesn't need your permission. It just follows the loop. Cue. Routine. Reward. It always starts with a trigger. Maybe it's a time of day, a place, a feeling. Then comes the routine, the action you've trained your body to perform. And finally, the reward, something your brain craves, even if you're not aware of it. And here's the trap. Once your brain recognizes a reward, it starts anticipating it. That anticipation builds craving. And cravings? They control you. But not all habits are bad. Some build nations. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus in 1955, it wasn't the first time someone had done it. But this time, something was different. The community around her responded, organized, and fought back. And behind that movement was more than emotion. It was routine, a pattern of action shaped by relationships and group identity. Habits don't just live in individuals, they live in groups, in organizations, in societies. That's how social movements are born. That's how change spreads. But what about businesses? In Cincinnati, a group of marketing geniuses at Procter & Gamble were failing to sell a product called Febreze. It removed odors, but no one cared. The product was brilliant, but it bombed. Until they changed one thing. Instead of marketing it as a cleaning tool, they linked it to a habit. They encouraged people to use Febreze as the final touch after making the bed or vacuuming, triggered by a sense of completion, rewarded with a fresh scent. Sales exploded into the billions. The product didn't change. The habit loop did. But habits aren't just opportunities, they're liabilities. Take Tony Dungy, the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He walked into one of the worst teams in the NFL. Instead of focusing on complicated plays, he changed how players responded instinctively. He trained them to react automatically, using habits to replace thought under pressure. And for a while, it worked. The team got better, faster, sharper. But in the playoffs, something snapped. Under pressure, the players fell back into old routines. They choked. Not because they lacked talent, but because they hadn't fully embedded the new habits. It took years. And when they finally broke through, winning the Super Bowl, it wasn't just because of skill. It was because the new habits had stuck. But what happens when habits destroy families? Take the story of a woman who sued a casino after gambling away everything, her savings, her home, her child's college fund. She claimed she'd been manipulated. That the casino had studied her behaviors, timed the free drinks, and targeted her weaknesses. And they had. Casinos, retail stores, social media platforms, they all do it. They track your habits, your shopping routines, your triggers. And then they use that data to manipulate you, to pull you back in. Because habits are predictable, and what's predictable can be sold. But here's the thing, they can also be rewritten. And that's where your power lies. Even the most deeply ingrained habit can be reshaped. Not erased, but replaced. You just have to isolate the cue, change the routine, and keep the reward. Over time, the craving shifts. The identity changes. And the habit? It becomes yours to control. But that's only the beginning. Because once you understand the architecture of habit, you begin to see it everywhere. In your morning routine, in your friendships, in your parenting, in your money, even in your faith. In the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, people aren't told to just stop drinking. They're taught to recognize their cues, stress, loneliness, shame, and to change their response. Go to a meeting. Call a sponsor. Pray. The reward remains the same: relief, connection, peace. But the routine? That's new. Still, that transformation doesn't hold unless they believe it can. And belief, real belief, isn't built in isolation. It grows in community, in struggle, in relapse and recovery, in watching someone else make it and thinking, maybe, just maybe, I can too. And this is just the first door. There's a man named Eugene. He's sitting quietly in a medical facility in San Diego. He doesn't remember why he's there. He doesn't remember the nurses. He doesn't remember his wife's name, though he smiles when she walks into the room. He had suffered a devastating brain infection. It wiped out his ability to form new memories. Each moment, for him, was the first moment all over again. He'd ask the same questions every few minutes. He couldn't describe where he lived, couldn't recall what day it was, couldn't tell you what happened 5 minutes ago. But something strange happened. Every morning, Eugene would take a walk around the block alone. without help. He couldn't describe the route, but he never got lost. He opened drawers to find the TV remote, used the bathroom, even got snacks without ever learning how. The doctors were stunned. How could a man with no memory perform routines perfectly? Because habits, it turns out, don't live where memories do. They live deeper, below logic, below awareness, in the basal ganglia. That's the terrifying and beautiful thing. You don't have to remember something for it to become a habit. Eugene's brain couldn't store facts, but it could store patterns. That discovery would change neuroscience. And it would force one question. If a man without memory could develop habits, what does that say about us? You're not choosing most of what you do. You're following scripts that have been etched into your mind by years of repetition. And unless you examine them, unless you become conscious, those scripts will run you into the ground. Take the story of Angie Bachman, a quiet housewife, suburban, kind, soft-spoken, with grown kids and time on her hands. She wandered into a casino out of boredom, played a few rounds, lost a few bucks. It felt harmless, but it was the beginning of something darker. The lights, the sounds, the winning streaks, the escape. It triggered something in her. It became a routine, a craving, a reward. Every week, she returned. Then every day, she gambled away her savings. Then she gambled away her home. And still, she couldn't stop. The casino? They noticed. And instead of stepping in, they gave her free rides, complimentary hotel stays, sent her cake on her birthday. They knew what she couldn't yet admit. That her habit loop was so strong, she'd keep coming back no matter the cost. So who's to blame? When her case went to court, her lawyers argued that it wasn't her fault, that she had been manipulated, that the casinos had built a behavioral machine designed to exploit people like her. But the court had a different view. They ruled against her. Because somewhere in that loop, she had become aware. She had seen what was happening. And once you're aware, you're responsible. That's the uncomfortable truth of habits. You might not be to blame for how they formed, but you're responsible for what you do once you understand them. And some people, they use that knowledge to reshape their entire identity. Like Paul O'Neill. When he became CEO of Alcoa, one of America's largest aluminum companies, everyone expected the usual corporate rhetoric: profits, efficiency, expansion. Instead, he stood on stage and said one thing: "I want to make Alcoa the safest company in America." People laughed. Investors panicked. But O'Neill wasn't joking. He focused relentlessly on safety. Not because it sounded good, but because it was a keystone habit, the kind of habit that changes everything else. When workers reported safety issues, communication improved. Trust grew. Teams functioned better. Processes got cleaner. Profits? They skyrocketed. By changing one habit, he changed the soul of a billion-dollar company. Not through pressure, not through micromanagement, through habit transformation. But it wasn't easy. Resistance came. Managers pushed back. Accidents still happened. But over time, the culture shifted. And when O'Neill left, the company's market value had quintupled. One small habit, big ripple. That's the power most people never tap into. And yet, it's not just businesses or addicts or brain-damaged patients who are affected. It's you. Right now, there's something you do, maybe daily, that you hate about yourself, that you hide, that you swear you'll stop tomorrow. It might be overeating, overspending, lashing out at your partner, avoiding hard conversations, drowning in screen time, shutting down when things get tough. You know it's hurting you, but you keep doing it. Not because you're weak, because you've trained your brain to expect the reward. And unless you change the loop, nothing changes. But here's where it gets real. You don't have to change everything. Just identify one loop. Just one. Start by finding the cue. Is it time? Place? Emotion? People? Then, break down the routine. What's the exact behavior? Finally, examine the reward. What do you actually get from it? Comfort? Escape? Control? Excitement? Relief? Once you isolate those three parts, you gain power. Because now, you can insert a new routine. A better one. One that still delivers the reward, but doesn't destroy you in the process. And yes, it will feel weird at first. That's normal. Because your brain is wired to protect the loop. But if you stay consistent long enough, the new habit becomes the default. And when that happens, you're not pretending to be different anymore. You're different. You become the person who doesn't check their phone first thing in the morning. The person who exercises when stressed instead of eating. The person who calls a friend instead of bottling up pain. The person who listens instead of shouting. The person who saves instead of spending. It doesn't feel like a battle anymore. It feels like who you are. That's how change works, not in big, dramatic declarations, but in quiet moments of repetition when no one's watching. When you choose the new path again and again. Until one day, it's not new anymore. It's just you. There's something strange that happens when you try to change your life. At first, it feels like hope, like a fresh start. You wake up early. You journal. You make smoothies. You go for that run. It's exhilarating. And then, something pushes back. You're tired. You're overwhelmed. Life gets noisy again. The gym feels too far. Your boss yells at you. Your phone starts to feel more like comfort than poison. And suddenly, the old version of you, sloppy, impatient, reactive, is back behind the wheel. The momentum dies. Not because you don't care, because you hit the wall of willpower. And willpower, it turns out, isn't a virtue. It's a muscle. Stanford researchers ran an experiment. 2 groups of people were asked to sit in a room. One group was given warm, gooey chocolate chip cookies. The other? Raw radishes. Both groups were told not to eat anything. The cookie group could barely resist. The radish group? They stayed strong. But that wasn't the real test. Afterward, both groups were asked to solve a puzzle. What they didn't know was, the puzzle was impossible. And here's where it gets interesting. The radish group gave up way faster. Why? Because they had already used up their willpower trying not to eat the cookies. That's what we're up against. Every decision we make, every moment we fight against instinct, drains our reserves. And if your life is filled with friction, your self-control will collapse by dinner time. So how do you fight back? By turning hard decisions into habits. Habits don't drain energy. They bypass the part of your brain that debates and resists. They happen below the surface. And that's why high performers, CEOs, soldiers, elite athletes, they automate the small things. They don't wait to feel inspired to work out. It's part of their system. They don't wonder whether to meditate. It's automatic. They don't eat based on cravings. They eat based on patterns. It's not discipline. It's architecture. And one of the best examples of this is Starbucks. Now, you might think it's just a coffee company. But behind that smiling barista handing you your latte is one of the most sophisticated habit-shaping training programs in corporate America. Starbucks doesn't just teach employees how to make coffee. It teaches them how to react when a customer yells, when there's a rush, when there's chaos. They train routines, specific scripts, predictable responses. They call it the latte method: listen, acknowledge, take action, thank the customer, and explain. And when employees mess up, they don't get punished. They get retrained. Because Starbucks knows what science knows. Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your training. So, if you haven't trained your habits, the stress will always win. But what if your habits aren't just about you? What if they shape your children? Your relationships? Your legacy? Take a look at the story of King's Cross, London. In 1987, a small fire broke out beneath an escalator in a busy train station. It should have been minor, easily containable. But the fire grew, unseen. fueled by years of grease and trash. And eventually, it exploded. Literally. A fireball ripped through the station, killing 31 people. How did it happen? Because of bad habits. No one had routines for cleaning under escalators, or tracking risk, or raising alarm quickly. People froze, confused. They hadn't practiced for it. They hadn't trained. It wasn't evil. It wasn't neglect. It was just routine dysfunction. And the only way that changed was when someone new took over and tore those routines apart. They rebuilt the system from scratch with new responses, new expectations, new habits. Because when you don't fix the small routines, they grow into disasters. And that's not just true for train stations. It's true for marriages, for careers, for lives. If you don't examine your patterns, you'll keep repeating them. You'll blow up at your partner the same way, spend money the same way, lie to yourself the same way, and you'll wonder, why does this keep happening? Because you've rehearsed it. Every conflict, every emotional spiral, every avoidance. You've practiced it. So now what? You rewrite the script. You do what Alcoholics Anonymous figured out decades ago. AA isn't successful because of some magical step program. It works because it rewires the habit loop. It doesn't remove the craving to drink. It changes the routine. Instead of grabbing a bottle, you grab a phone. You show up to a meeting. You talk. You process. And at the end, you get the same reward: relief, belonging, peace, just through a different behavior. But the program doesn't stop there. The real power of AA isn't routine, it's belief. Belief that change is possible. Belief that you're not alone. Belief that your identity isn't locked into your mistakes. And that belief isn't born from reading a self-help book or watching an inspiring speech. It's born from community. From sitting in a circle of people who've been where you are and are now standing where you want to be. That's the engine of transformation. And it's why your own change journey has to be about more than white-knuckling your way through a new habit. It has to be about becoming a new kind of person. Someone who sees triggers as opportunities. Someone who builds habits on purpose. Someone who leads themselves before leading others. And yeah, it's hard. There will be days you slip. Moments you feel like nothing's working. But that's part of the process. Because every relapse is just more information, more clarity about the loop. And eventually, when you get tired of your own excuses, of the way things have always been, something clicks. You get up one more time. You walk into the new habit again. And this time, you don't leave. It's a quiet Tuesday morning in New York. A man wakes up in his small apartment in Brooklyn. He makes coffee, checks his email, and tells himself today will be different. Today he won't yell at his kids. Today he won't waste time scrolling. Today he'll finally apply for that promotion. But by noon, he's overwhelmed. By 4 p.m., he's exhausted. And by 8 p.m., he's lost again in the same cycle, short-tempered, distracted, defeated. He falls asleep with guilt in his chest and his phone still in his hand. Tomorrow, he thinks, tomorrow I'll change. But tomorrow is never different until it is. That's the quiet revolution the power of habit unveils, that you're never more than one loop away from a new life. One loop. Cue. Routine. Reward. Master it and you master yourself. But there's a catch. One final truth. Habits never fully die. They're still there, buried beneath the surface, waiting for stress, for fatigue, for pain. That's why recovering addicts relapse, why fitness junkies slip, why old insecurities come back like old friends. But relapse doesn't mean failure. It means there's something more to learn. There's a story Duhigg shares about a woman named Mandy. She had a history of smoking, drinking, bad relationships. For years, she'd fall into destructive patterns every time life got hard. But one day, she made a different move. After a breakup, instead of drinking, she joined a hiking group. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't feel profound. But it changed everything. She didn't just find a new routine. She found a new identity. Because here's what the science finally proved. The most powerful habit of all is belief. And belief, real belief, is born when new behavior turns into identity. When running isn't just something you do, but something you are. When kindness isn't something you practice, but who you are becoming. When emotional control isn't a tactic, but a reflection of your character. And when you look in the mirror and don't see the old version of yourself with a new habit, but someone completely rewritten. Because you are not your past. You are not your worst decisions. You are not stuck. You're just rehearsed. And the brain? It's ready to rehearse something new. But don't be fooled. This isn't just about personal growth. It's bigger than that. Habits shape organizations, cultures, nations. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't lead a revolution on charisma alone. It was networks of habits that made change unstoppable. People marched because they were used to organizing. Churches moved because they were already connected. Every act of resistance had its roots in routine. Movements aren't spontaneous. They're built on daily practices. And that's true in every corner of life. Your family runs on habit. Your business? Fueled by habit. Your health, finances, faith, creativity, confidence, it's all habit. So ask yourself, what's running in the background when you're not thinking? Because those invisible choices? They're choosing your future. But now you see the loop. Now you know how to step into the space between the cue and the routine and make a different move. You know how to hunt for the reward your brain's really after. You know that craving is a compass, not a curse. You know you don't have to quit everything. You just need to swap the loop. One change, one ripple. That's how lives transform. Not overnight, but daily, slowly, then all at once. And when it sticks, it doesn't feel like change. It feels like freedom. It feels like remembering who you were before the bad habits got louder than your potential. Before the excuses took root. Before you got convinced that this version of you was the final draft. Because it's not. You're still being written. And today is a blank page. So now you've seen it. Habits aren't destiny. They're design. They're choices that once felt invisible, but now you can see them for what they are. Patterns, scripts, rehearsals. And just like any script, they can be rewritten. You don't need more motivation. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to change the loop, one loop, and stay with it long enough to make it yours. Because the power isn't in the habit. The power is in you. So as you step away from this story and back into your own, don't just remember what you've learned, live it. Change your routine. Claim your identity. And above all, believe. Because when belief becomes a habit, nothing can stop you. You've got this.